Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are now in session 3, Energy and Critical Infrastructure Operations and Maintenance. 那非常欢迎各位贵宾呢继续回到我们的大会的会场哦。我们主轴3的场次呢，要聚焦的是能源以及关键基础设施维运。首先呢，让我们掌声有请主持人为我们开场。Please welcome your moderator for the session, Kenny Huang, member of the Whole of Society Defense Resilience Committee 全社会防卫韧性委员会黄胜雄委员。
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the particular session focused on energy and critical infrastructure operation and maintenance. I think this section we have invited a lot of distinguished panelists and speakers. They will focus on a particular area, especially how to reduce, enhance the critical infrastructure operation, and how to strengthen the resilience for the critical infrastructure shared experience. On the first, I'd like to welcome the chairman, Zheng Wensheng, is a chairman of the Taiwan Power Company. He's going to give up a talk in terms of how the Taiwan Power Company to enhance the energy resilience. Let's welcome Chairman Zheng.
各位午安。有很多要听英文的朋友，很抱歉，你必须戴上你的耳机。好，首先我跟各位说明一下，因为我受到邀请要来跟各位分享的是有关于电力的韧性准备。那其实对台湾来讲，如果要讲到能源，其实在石油危机那个时代，台湾大概对于石油的部分的储存就已经达到一个蛮高的标准，所以最近大家讨论比较关心的都多半是在电力，所以我想要花一些时间跟各位分享台湾的电力韧性准备的状况。我知道其实尤其是台湾的朋友对于电力韧性准备其实非常非常有兴趣，但我在这边要跟大家说抱歉，我今天只能够做一个梗概式的，就是大略的介绍。因为台电公司曾经被警告，就是我们公司的网站对于台湾的电力系统的说明的实在太过详细了，就是那个 open data open 的太过范围太宽了，所以我们事实上是今天我要跟各位说明是，我简单跟各位讲，其实台电在台湾电力系统的韧性准备上面的几个面向，事实上有做了哪一些努力。但它有些细节，可能真的不是方便在一个会有直播的场合里面讲的，所以我这边先跟，如果有些朋友或未来对一些细节会有兴趣，我想透过我们今天主办单位等等的一些安排，我们可以再做进一步的讨论。那我简单快速的跟各位报告一下状况，因为不见得大家都了解台湾的电力系统的情形。这个是台湾电力系统的装置量，就我有多少电力设备。另外一个就是它每年发多少度数。那台湾现在的装置容量已经将近要60个 gigawatt，60个 gigawatt。那我们的日间峰负载已经超过40个 gigawatt， 其实是一个相对来讲负载比较高的国家。那我们的台电的年发电量大概是2500多亿度，那再加上民间自己的发电设备，大概已经超过2800亿度。那讲简单一点，如果用我们的国土面积来做分母的话，台湾的用电密度其实是非常非常高的，在单位面积里面，尤其是我们的台湾的国土里面有一半是山，所以真正有居住人的位置里面用电的密度非常的高。这个跟台湾的用电密度我大概算了一下可能跟日本的东京都大的东京都比起来相去不远。那整个电力系统的状况是这样，你其实会看到很明显，就是大部分的用电都集中在西部，那比较重要的负载其实是在北部。 那接下来是南部，因为我们陆陆续续科学园区的新建，所以现在越来越多的电力使用，事实上是因为南科的兴起而逐渐的往南部做发展。那接下来还有包括高雄的一些科学园区。台湾过去这10年来最主要的电力成长来源，其实就是我们的科技产业，就是我们的半导体产业以及它衍生出来的一些相关产业。那其他部分你会看到东部的面积其实蛮大的，但是它的用电跟负载比例都低。那整个电力系统大家可以看起来就是说其实台湾的电力系统密度非常的高，就是那个前一阵子台湾发生了一个台风，倒掉了3000多根电杆，史上最高的一次就在今年7月发生。可是那3000多根电杆倒掉以后，占我们的比例其实非常的低，就占台湾电力系统的比例非常的低，到1%，非常的低。所以我们会看到台湾是西岸系用电密度非常高。那如果大家想要把它记得，其实很简单，就如果你把这些电线看成是那个半导体的导线，台湾的西岸就像一块晶片一样，密密麻麻的导线，是密密麻麻的导线。那整个电力系统的概况是这样，台湾的电力系统呢，是我们南北各有一个中央调度中心，在指挥调度安排所有的电力供应。那基本上这2个电力调度中心是可以控制发电机的起降，控制各个电路输送送电的一些方向。那在这个六个中央调度中心底下，其实分了6个区，就是台北、新竹跟桃园，然后中部，然后嘉南，然后高屏，再加上东部，就这分这6个区域。那这6个区域是早先依照比较早期在30年前左右的负载中心去做安排的。可是我们现在慢慢看到，其实我这样子讲，比方说新竹、桃园的负载已经变得非常的大，它已经是一个很大的区域调度中心。那在整个电力能量储备的部分也跟大家快速报告一下，就是在太阳光电、风力发电、水力还有储能上面，现在台湾的供电状况是怎么样？那特别跟各位说明这一个部分的状况是这样子，就是说台湾的再生能源大概在今年会发电度数会达到年度总度数的 15%， 会达到 15%。 那再生能源基本上不需要透过燃料进口。那很多人会关心说台湾的燃料储备等等相关的问题。某种程度上面，再生能源的比例如果足够高，再加上足够的储能，我们的电量的自主性就会有一定程度的提高。这是再生能源对台湾非常有意义的地方。那尤其最近，其实我们也开始在加速做一些地热发电的一些相关的推动。那因为地热发电如果能够有效的推动的话，事实上它对于我们在地供应电力的韧性会有很大的提升，尤其是它可以几乎就是只要技术是 OK， 它几乎可以跟负载相匹配，就是用电跟发电是可以有相匹配的机会的。那就燃料的储备来讲，我要讲现况。现况就是我们法定规定燃煤的储存状况是要安全存量是30天，天然气的安全存量是11天，但实际上我们现在可存的天数、再存的天数、实际存的天数是比这个再稍微多一些。那燃煤的存量是比30天多，有一定的比例在。那除了这个以外，其实我们也做了一些相关的规划，尤其是那个今天参与台湾的朋友大概是这样，就是说台湾这几年来用电再加上机组除役是一个非常大的高峰期。我们从2016年以来到现在，我们的机组除役超过10个 gigawatt， 超过10个 gigawatt， 就是退休了。那新增的负载规模非常的大。那来回 来回大概有17、18个 gigawatt， 就是新增再减掉除去，所以我们最近盖了陆续在盖机组，盖非常非常多的机组。那与此同时，因为我们同时盖了很多的机组，我们会把就是说在法规上面已经是在商业目的上面已经除役的机组都保留下来。那为什么保留下来？因为最主要是他们有很多是燃煤机组，我们希望在遇到一些特定的状况的时候，我们的这些燃煤机组能够上线供电，能够发挥它一定的功能。那除此之外，其实台湾的产业界是相当大的一个电力储存的系统。为什么？因为他们有庞大的紧急发电机，那个紧急发电机的量其实是蛮大的。那我们有计算过，就是有一些公司是让它的紧急发电机的量已经达到25% 到1/3左右，它的那个规模其实是不小。但我们平常都不会去启动它，可是它是一个可以发电的系统。那刚才讲的都是电能的部分，那在另外一个部分，就是我们其实台电也有在研究一些相关的状况，主要是2个主轴，就是其实电网的稳定性。就台湾是一个特殊的状况下，因为它是一个海岛，所以燃料的部分变成大家非常关注的问题。可是事实上，电网 grid 才是很多国家在稳定它的电力供应的时候最关键的题目。那遇到的大概是2个挑战。一般的状况下，最大的是极端气候，就是洪水、台风、地震。那最近有一个非常新的题目，就是落雷、打雷。因为极端气候的关系，现在打雷的电力通量都远高于过去，所以那些电力设备的那个避雷设施不见得能够支撑这么大的一个落雷量。这台电都在做调整当中，那除了这个以外，另外一个就是地缘政治。其实坦白说，台电也有在了解一下，就是在乌克兰俄乌战争里面发生的一些状况，就是电力设施可能受到怎么样子的人为破坏。那怎么样去防止这些人为破坏？那尤其是我们台湾其实是一个相对有效率的电网系统。有效率的意思就是它互相资源连结的非常紧密。它有没有机会在中央的调度中心没办法调度的时候，各自还可以分群去调度？是台电现在在做的工作。那在做这个工作的同时，我们这7个策略和主轴，等一下我一一跟各位做说明。首先第一件事，台湾非常有特别因为台湾的中央是山所以过去我们在连通跟输送南北电力最关键的电网，就沿着山边建。那为什么会沿着我们的中央山脉建？因为它那些河道的跨距比较短，就是河道没有那么宽，所以它电塔2个中间的距离比较短，比较容易过。那同时人也比较少，所以我们现在的最重要的主干线就沿着中央山脉西侧的中央山脉这个地方建。那最近我们2022年开始，我们检讨到，就是我们全部都透过这样子一条主干线来做电力的融通跟输送，事实上会让风险集中。那遇到电力事故的时候，它停电的范围也会增加，所以我们开始做一些新的改变，就仿照 Internet 的观念。其实你如果让它连接的节点不要是树枝状，而是网状，因为原来的设计结构是树枝状，你把它设计成网状，就是在西岸，尤其我们的电厂都在西岸，如果能够直接跟我们用电的中心链接，再透过这个用电的中心，未来它就比较有机会形成上下2层，就东西2层的供电网络，逐渐把它变成网状。那与此同时，也可以符合就是台湾的高科技产业快速的成长所需要的用电。那一次我们达成2个目的，所以我们让大的电厂直接供应我们大的科学园区。那从2016年开始，我们大量布建的绿能，也希望它能够直接就在就近的负载就用掉。 不再像台电过去的电网一样，都送到最上面中央那一层再重新分配。那另外第二个事情，刚才讲的都是 top down 的事情了，现在讲从 bottom 上来。几次的台湾的天然灾害都叫我们去重新反省说，如果我们的电网受到影响的时候，我们有一些在电网比较末端的用电单位，有没有办法透过别的方式能够让它稳定供电？那其实以台湾来讲，我们现在还没有比较充分的地热，比较容易用到的就是太阳光电。那我们用 PV 结合储能，开始陆陆续续的在创造一个区域型的电网。有一个历史的因缘际会，就是在2023年的时候，其实台湾推动了一个政策，就是因为台湾其实蛮热的，但是我们的中小学不一定全部都有冷气，没有空调。那当时的行政院都推了一个新的政策，就是所有的中小学都装上空调。那在装上空调的同时，也在屋顶上全部都装了太阳光电。所以台湾现在有3-4千个据点是公共空间，上面是有太阳光电板的。那这个公共空间如果能够加上储能，以一个 local 的地点，就是学校是非常重要的集合的中心，如果它有适当的储能设施，它就会变成是一个未来稳定供电，就是尤其是只是符合民生需求的这种民生供电，会变成是一个很重要的基础。那所以这是一个由下而上的电网韧性创造的一个新的契机。那接下来跟各位说明一下，就是说因为今天讲到关键基础设施硬体防护，其实台电的电厂基本上现在都是警察在警力在站岗。过去有一段时间是保全，就是保全公司，但是现在已经全部都是警力在站岗。讲简单一点，其实它的管制规范已经变得非常严格。那电厂里面通常有第二道门，就是进到发电的设备的区域跟进到那个行政区，这是2个不同的管制。那再进到电厂区域里面的管制会更严格。那除了这一个以外，最近最新的题目就是我们在加强防范无人机的攻击。那防范无人机的攻击，攻击2个字其实还没有出现呢，但是防范这件事已经开始在做。台电已经跟警方合作，就是在我们的管制区，因为电厂是管制区，依照台湾的法令是不能够飞无人机的。那只要飞进我们的管制区，我们就会开始根据它的讯号源去抓人，因为我们公司是保警在站岗，所以我们已经成功了，有曾经逮捕到违反法律规定在电厂飞无人机的。那当然一些相关的设施准备，其实现在行政院的国土办、国安会都非常用力的在督导台电尽快加速处理这一些相关的问题。无人机的防卫其实有非常多新的议题要处理，就不只是台电自己本身啊，那可能要跟这些系统的发展要同步的来做进步。那另外一个是资通讯治安的防护哦。那我刚才看到我们李志伟走进来了，等一下如果他要讲话，让他讲比较好。台电的表现，台电是很认真的哈。但我要说一件事，治安的威胁是天天都存在的。我其实很清楚的跟我们的同仁说，治安防护最重要的心态是什么？就是你没有一天是准备好的，你永远都要担心会有新的攻击模式来攻击你。所以我们是尽我们的能力做各种治安的防护，但最关键的，目前最关键的一件事，是我们会把 IT 跟 OT 分开，就是我们整个设备调度的部分，电网系统跟电厂系统的调度等等，还有运转，它的通讯系统其实不是用我们台湾的公网，是我们用自己台电自己建的相关的网络来做。那 所有的发电设备基本上是跟 Internet 隔开的。那这是我们在非常努力做的一个相关的工作，所以我们大部分做的一些防御可能都会是我们的一些客服管理系统啊等等的一些东西。那这些工作我们也会加强来做。那比较重要的是，最近跟我们的友邦进行了非常多的合作，那也在训练相关的人员，能够让我们在治安的防护上有更清楚或是更有效的做防御以及提升。那不过就国营事业来说，我们现在最重要的工作，就治安来讲，我们最重要的工作就是提升我们的人力。那最后我要跟各位分享一个事情，你时间到了，不好意思，因为你5分钟没出来举，我就不知道时间到了。我很快的在2分钟之内把它讲完。刚才我跟各位说，我们透过南北2个 CDC 机互相备援，调度全台湾的本岛的电力，离岛只有澎湖跟我们有电缆连接，其他没有。那这两个调度中心是互相备援的，而且同时都在上班哦，就是它是两边随时互相备援。那我们现在会将我们在假定我们的中央调度中心2个调度中心无法调度的时候，交给区域的调度中心，就刚才讲的6个区域调度中心来调度。那最重要的是电网一旦受攻击，如果已经电网是停电的状况，要重新启动，它是有很缜密的程序的。如果在座有电业相关的人士一定知道，我们现在就在磨练我自主电源在什么地方，怎么样把既有的发电机重新带起来，再透过区域的方式逐步的让电力能够做供应。这是我们现在在做的事，但这个也还是 top down， 就是从上而下。那另外一个我刚才讲的就是我们的安全庇护等等相关的一些工作，我们现在也就接受行政院指导，我们在做区域型的防灾电网。那微型的电网就我刚才讲的，结合储能，结合小型的发电机，结合光电做的小型的安置据点。那接下来是电网的融通策略哦。那我们其实已经在盘点必要的负载，就是一旦我们要限制电力供应的时候，必要的负载是什么地方？那这个其实是需要事先做准备的，否则到时候会乱成一团。那我们也有跟台电公司，因为是事业单位，我有跟我们的长官做一些报告，就是我们希望在快速的状况之下，把这一些必要的负载等等能够确定下来。那接下来我们在调度上面跟停止供电的管理上面能够更精准。那同时我们也在增加电网的融通裕度。讲简单一点，过去从台北到高雄，如果只有一条高速公路，我得要另外想办法再建另外一个公路，让它可以做融通的可能性，避免单一节点被破坏，失去融通的可能。这是我们现在在努力的工作。最后我还是要说哈，因为我们要照顾到我们全部的民生，有一个事情，其实我们是透过这个东西在训练台电公司的同仁对于电力修复反应速度。因为韧性这件事情不是不会受到破坏，如果受到破坏的时候你能够快速恢复，这是一个非常重要的指标。这几年来的台湾，过去这3年来台湾的台风大概都变成是台电自我训练的一个非常重要的演习。那台湾的配电线路超过1万条，就是主要的馈线，不是那种小的分歧线，就主要的馈线是高压的，依然是高压线，就是22K 就22000伏特以上的，超过1万条。那这几年来它的停跳电次数其实降了65%，我们透过各种方式把可以保护下来，包括避免外物感电，那个外物的感电包括动物、植物等等的，好，就是大自然的一些影响。那也减少人为的干预。那我们做的变电所在台湾，现在变电所只要是新盖的，全部是室内的。在台湾现在新盖的变电所，全部是新盖的，一定是室内的，就是让它被房子保护起来，避免它受到外物的侵扰或是人为的破坏。那这是我们现在正在努力的工作，硬体的部分。那配电的准备跟抢修，就是我们抢修同仁的训练，就我们透过这几次的台风，台湾的抢修，因为我们的范围其实并不大，我们实际上在西岸几乎东西两岸几乎都是全部都是 单一地方受创，会是全国的能量经过事先的一些安排调度去抢修，所以我们的抢修的速度这几年来，就如果我们用电力设备受破坏的状况来做基础讨论的话，我们的抢修速度其实是提高了不少。那尤其是台风的停电天数，那跟过去的统计资料来比，同样的停电规模，现在的复电速度是比以前还要快。那这些都是我们在做电力韧性的一些准备。最后我只说一件事，我还是要再一次跟各位道歉。在座如果有很多电力专业的想要讨论电力专业的细节，因为我被警告不可以在直播前面讲，所以如果有机会的话，非常欢迎能够透过我们的一些主办单位，我们能够做私下的一些沟通跟交流。谢谢各位，谢谢。
掌声谢谢台电曾文生董事长。董事长请在台上留步，直接加入座谈呢，我们工作人员引导一下，谢谢。And thank you very much to Chairman of Thai Power 文生曾。那接下来我们要有请我们的主持人黄胜雄委员再次回到舞台上。And we'll also like to invite our 3 panel speakers to join us on the stage. You may bring your interpreting device with you to the stage. 我们接下来呢，有请我们的语坛贵宾到台上就座。Please welcome Ian Satchwell, Senior Fellow of Australian Strategic Policy Institute. 有请澳洲战略政策研究所资深研究员。Next, we'd also like to welcome Patrick Kong, Asia Regional Leader for Aeroderivative Solutions, GE Vernova Gas Power. 接下来我们有请美商 GE Vernova Gas Power 航太解决方案亚洲区的总监，以及科技民主与社会研究中心吕彩颖研究员。彩颖 Liu, Research Fellow of Research Institute for Democracy Society.and Emerging Technology. 接下来再把时间交给主持人黄胜雄委员。Over to our moderator.
Okay, right. Thank you, MC, and also thank you for all distinguished participants, and thank you everyone to join this section. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Chairman Zeng, because he just talking about very comprehensive resilience plan that was planning in the Thai Power Company. As he mentioned, also a reminder to all participants and all panelists. And some of the information in this energy sector actually is quite sensitive. So please allow us. We couldn't provide all kind of information in detail, whether you have questions later. And we cannot provide all comprehensive data to you because a lot of data actually is quite sensitive. But anyway, we still have prepared some basic questions to the all panelists. And I probably leave more time to the flow. Probably you can have more time to ask questions to the either speaker or to panelists. And also one reminder to all attendees, and you can respond to the question either in English or either in Chinese. I think both work fine, and we have interpreter to help for translation. So I'd like to go back to the first question already prepared in advance. Okay, my first question actually was to Mr. Zeng and also to Yan. I speak English first and in Chinese later. Australia and Taiwan actually are both maritime states. And so what would be the feasible strategy for short-term emergency resupply and long-term energy resilience planning, both from Taiwan point of view and from Australia point of view? 台湾跟澳洲都是海洋的国家，那在这个应对这个整个能源的韧性的部分呢，有没有一些短期的一些应处的措施，以及长期在提升能源韧性的一些规划？那我先从曾文生董事长开始 ，starting from Mr. Zeng first。
好，谢谢主持人哦。其实还有一个机敏的议题跟主持人的工作有关，我们的海缆的保护跟他海底通讯缆的保护都是现在关键的议题哦。那不过现在讲到澳洲的部分，我要先说，其实澳洲几乎是台湾最重要前3名的能源合作伙伴，就是我们的燃煤跟天然气的进口，有非常高的比例是从澳洲来的。那除了这个以外，其实我们跟澳洲每年都有固定的能源座谈，是双方的官方的非正式的一些座谈，交换非常多的意见。 那我要先说一个事啊，其实如果就能源的基础条件来讲，澳洲是比台湾好很多，因为澳洲产天然气又产煤，所以澳洲基本上没有自产能源的压力。不过我们也看到它最近也开始在发展再生能源，也在试着做氢能，那也在试着做一些相关的电网强韧的工作。其实这些台湾跟澳洲都有很紧密的讨论。但我觉得台湾跟澳洲非常需要做的一个重要的合作，就是怎么样确保亚太地区这个能源供应链的稳定，会是非常重要的事。那这当然不会只是台湾跟澳洲两个国家的事，这可能是整个亚太区的盟邦必须一起来努力的工作，就是我们怎么样建立一个稳定的能源供应链，不管是天然气或者是燃煤。因为从澳洲出发，它的能源船舶，不管是天然气船或是燃煤船，要经过台湾到日本、韩国。日本跟韩国同样有非常多的天然气或者是燃煤进口。那除此之外，以台湾本身的立场来看，我们除了有澳洲这样子一个合作伙伴，我们也需要跟更多的国家，比方说能够从北边送天然气来，就比较不会受到台湾南边的海域如果受到限制的话，而产生供应链的断裂。所以我们怎么样能够去创造北边来的天然气，这个也是现在我们在努力的一些工作。不过以台湾现在的状况来讲，我们现在的能源进口其实是尽量分散，那能够跟我们的友邦有更紧密的关系，让能源的输送稳定，这个我觉得会是一个非常重要可以彼此分享跟合作的一个工作。
Just check. Oh, we are on? Good. Well, that was a very interesting presentation. I thought it was most comprehensive, even though you could not share some of the detail. You said some kind things about the Australian electricity system, but I must say the transition to lower carbon electricity sources is proving to be a challenge. We are having difficulty ensuring that investment is located in the right places to enable the power grid to take it to the demand centres. And often renewables generation at grid scale is inhibited because the transmission infrastructure has not kept up. We are closing down coal stations, they are reaching the end of their life, but the growth of renewables hasn't been sufficient, and the growth of storage, especially long-term storage, has not been sufficient. So the end result is that we are having some periodic shortages. The lights have not gone out yet, but they can threaten to, especially on very hot days in the east, and we have had substantial price increases. So there are lessons from that too, I think, that Taiwan and Australia should talk about. Now, if I can talk briefly, Kenny, about supply chains, because as the chairman highlighted, Australia is a major supplier. We supply about 50% of Taiwan's coal, but some of that goes for steel making, and about 40% of Taiwan's LNG. And all of that comes by sea from more or less the same latitude, so straight north to Taiwan. But those sea lanes are contested, and that creates risks, and they're increasingly contested. I'm pleased to say that Australia is investing big time because, one, Taiwan is an important customer, but so are South Korea and Japan. So we all have interests in common. Australia as the major supplier, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan as major customers that share those sea lanes. Australia is investing a lot in sea lane protection technology with the UK government and the US government. The AUKUS, Australia, UK, US alliance will have one, Australia will be buying nuclear submarines, first some second-hand ones from the US and then building them along with the UK. But we will have, in very short order, within a couple of years, UK and US nuclear submarines based on the same latitude as Taiwan. And that will enable on-station time in the sea lanes of up to 83 days. So very close, and they'll be based there, there'll be maintenance facilities. And that's really going to be very important. There is some other technology, and only a few days ago, Australia announced these fantastic new robot submarines, so large autonomous underwater vehicles that will work with conventional submarines, manned submarines. It's all very classified. They've announced it, but they're not saying how many they will build, but they said dozens. And they will be very important technology. At the rate that they're going to be built, Australia will be possibly the largest or maybe the second largest operator of these autonomous submarines, which will be very important for protecting sea lanes and, by the way, also submarine cables. There's also maritime patrol capability, and there's a new base for Australian and US maritime patrol planes in the north of Australia in Darwin, probably only 6 hours flying time from Taiwan. So all these things are very important for the protection of sea lanes and the supply of coal and LNG to keep the lights on in Taiwan. Can I finish with, the submarines, by the way, have got a great name, Ghost Shark. I should also mention a new AUKUS deep space tracking facility to protect friendly satellites from unfriendly satellites. And that the first of the new AUKUS facilities, I drove past the other day, and it's in the north of Australia, and it has the wonderful name DART, Deep Space Advanced Radar Capability. So it will be protecting satellites. Finally, just like to touch on, and we can talk a bit more about this later if you're interested, and that is, we think of supply chains as bringing energy here to create electricity, but there is also the option of taking, I don't want to take market share from you, Chairman, but there is the option of taking high power using industries away from Taiwan. So 2 examples, green steel, having a joint supply chain, doing green iron in Australia, using our abundant energy resources, and then bespoke steel production in Taiwan. The other one is data centres. Can we do Taiwanese Australian data centres at gigawatt scale, so AI data centres, in Australia using low carbon energy, renewables firmed by abundant gas in northern Australia, and use defence assets to protect the cables, but photons, electrons and radio waves are much cheaper to move and easier to move than coal and LNG. So there is an alternative approach to supply chains. With that, Kenny, I'll finish.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. Actually, Ian really broadened the topic to a very broad coverage, and not only focus on the critical infrastructure, but also consider the sea and deep sea, sea land, and space, deep space. So the protection of critical infrastructure becomes a job for Guardian of the Galaxy, something like that. So I'd like to extend the topic a little bit because actually the critical infrastructure, not only inland, but actually it happens to everywhere, above water, under the water, in the sky, in the space, or even in the deep space. So according to that, and the government usually need to collaborate in terms of energy, need to collaborate with a lot of international energy company. And how can government to do the better cooperation with international energy company, and either through the through government policy or through any market mechanism, and to improve the risk and also improve the security of national energy security. I'd like to visit the topic actually a little bit broad. I'd like to start from Ian first, then go to Patrick, go to Tsai-In. And Chairman, if you want to comment, please welcome. Starting from Ian first.
Okay, I'll take an upstream perspective working with international energy companies. Australia has a number of large energy companies that supply Thai power and LNG for other uses, plus coal companies. But let's focus on LNG. One of the issues we've got in Australia, or have had in Australia, is uncertainty of gas policy. As the government is thinking about decarbonisation, it thinks in a binary way. Renewables good, gas bad. Wrong answer, wrong answer. What we must do is recognise that for Australia, in Australia, but also and especially for our export market, you cannot transition to low carbon sources without gas. Gas is essential. Thankfully, in the last year, the Australian National Gas Strategy has recognised that gas will have a role for both in Australia and for our customers for the next 50 years, because it is essential for that energy transition to much more renewables, especially as storage technology is still going to take a long time to catch up. So what's very important for Australia, and I suggest, I'm not from the government, which is good, so I'm going to tell Taiwan what you should be saying to Australia. Japan is saying to Australia, we buy LNG from Australia and coal and iron ore because you are a very reliable supplier. But we're worried you seem to be getting less reliable because you are not allowing companies to develop their resources at a pace that keeps up with the market window. So it's about certainty of regulation for companies, certainty of approvals processes, and speed to market.
Thank you. Over to you, Patrick.
I must commend Ian. You're an excellent spokesperson for Australia. Well, I think to the question, obviously, the earlier panelists spoke about PPP, public-private partnership, and I think there's a lot of room for collaboration. It is an obvious need. There are times when policymakers are not able to maybe keep up to pace in terms of what is real and what is truly technically feasible in the market. And I think the role of private organizations and private companies is to provide that, we call it the Genba view, which is essentially the view of the operator, the view from the ground, what is real and what is not. Last week, I had the opportunity to participate in NLIT, which is a power generation conference in Bangkok. And interestingly, the theme of that conference was realistic energy transition. In the past, we talk about energy transition. But now the word realistic was added into it. And to Ian's point, you cannot enable clean and renewables without realistically understanding what is possible, and gas is an enabler. So I'm not going to pitch on, the role of gas and how important it is. I think a lot of the folks in the audience would know that. But clearly, these are the sort of opportunities that the private sector could step up and play more and act as conduit, right, with the public sector to educate and to continue to, explore new ways to power the different countries.
Okay, right. Thank you. Over to you, Taiyin.
Okay, hi. So pleasure to be here. I think I'm going to add on what Ian and also Chairman, also what I just said about how do we improve the maritime energy supply chain and also what's the flexibility of it. So there are two major things that we can do. One is we already have this cargo swapping system. So a better collaboration between private and public sector also includes all these suppliers, LNG and coal suppliers. How can we have the fluent channel and information sharing system that we can all know, what's the current, maybe there's a potential interruption of the certain routes, and how can we have these cargo swapping systems with our Japanese partner or South Korean partner to have to swap all these LNG or existing coal that can be used even if we have this kind of interruption. Another thing is that during potential interruptions at sea, how do we ensure that we have an insurance mechanism that can still going on? Because based on my study with all these LNG suppliers and also insurance companies, they all ask for a further information sharing channel with our governments so that they can know more in terms of the actual situation that happened at the sea, so that they can have a clear insurance policy and to make sure that all these shipping companies can still go to Taiwan and to ship all these LNG and coal to Taiwan even under uncertainties. So I think these two things that can also requires public and private sectors collaboration and can actually enhance Taiwan's energy resilience in general. I'll stop here.
Okay, thank you. And do you want to additional comment? 有没有额外补充的部分？
我只有一个说明啊，就是刚才两位都帮我们解释了，就是在台湾这一个阶段，为什么快速的在发展天然气的发电设备，就是它是如果以台湾来讲，就是它要快速的提供电能，又能够减少碳排，环境的影响比较小。这可能是现在的最佳解，但对台湾来讲，尤其是台电公司来说，我们现在有一个非常重要的责任，就是我们必须跟整个国家一起面对可能未来的风险，不管是极端气候或者是地缘政治。所以我刚才包含我们的整个机组，过去已经是除役的，我们都还保持着它一定程度的可以运转的状况。我在这边也要特别说，就是说刚才有提到一些未来的发展或是公共的讨论，但在台湾台电公司做的工作就是把我手上所有可以发电的机组都尽量的维持在当政府一声令下我们能够运转。
好，谢谢曾董事长分享。那 actually all the panelists already addressed very well regarding to how can we improve the resilience for critical infrastructure. But basically, some of the vulnerabilities still quite obvious, especially if we're talking about maritime state, for example, like Australia or Taiwan or the other maritime state. And basically, the sea route blockage could be a biggest vulnerability if the sea route has been blockaged by your arrival, and how can you sustainable under that kind of disaster situation or under almost gray zone aggression situation. So back to the very disaster situation, like one question extend to our third question. The third question is, we know like GE has been operate their facility in Ukraine and working with Ukraine. And so that kind of experience is very real, and especially Ukraine is under a very stressful situation. And how can you ensure the facility you operate is still sustainable under such severe situation? And especially, how can you ensure your employee safety? And how can you manage all the people's safety, even a massive relocation to the staff? And would you like to share your experience to us, and also later Public Time can also add a comment, or the rest of the panelists can also comment on that. Thank you.
Sure. Well, unfortunately, after the war, Ukraine lost almost between 55 to 65% of its power generation capacity. It also lost maybe about 50% of its transmission and distribution capability. So it is a very drastic situation. So what GE has done has very quickly sprung into action to provide, first of all, some joint consultation with the government to say that, hey, first of all, if you want to respond in a very urgent manner, you cannot have protocols after protocols after protocols. Speed is essential. So what the Ukraine government has very quickly done and adapted really well, in my opinion, is to form a body that kind of bypasses a lot of the typical, maybe protocols that you would expect in many governments. To begin with, every government has a role to play. Every ministry has a role to play. By design, it is meant to drive accountability. That's why you have multiple checks and balances. But in a drastic situation as what the Ukraine government is going through, they cannot afford that sort of, maybe protocols, if you will. So as such, the Ukrainian government very quickly formed a committee that bypasses a lot of the typical protocols. The essence of this is not about how they've structured it. Every government is different, every country has different needs. The essence of this is really about how they have realized that empowerment to make the right decisions in a timely manner is critical. So as such, that helped us as well. You know, we were able to very quickly deploy 2 units of TM2500. TM2500 is a version of gas turbine that is derived from aircraft engines. And as such, it is highly flexible, it is redeployable, it can burn different types of fuel, and so on and so forth. We were able to deploy 2 units of TM very quickly to them. We also deployed mobile substations that can be redeployed and deployed to different places. We supplied what we call static synchronous compensators. We provide training to the team, and all this is done safely. Now here is the interesting bit. From the point of us deploying those, TMs, the aero gas turbines, to the point of generating power to the grid, it took 8 months. Now, I'm not sure whether you realize that 8 months is a long time. In a lot of the other places where we provide crisis response, as an example, we moved 1 unit of TM, the same technology, in Saudi Arabia, from the city of Medina to Gujarat within 12 days, right? Crisis response in Puerto Rico after the hurricane, in Mexico after the huge, magnitude 8 earthquake that they experienced, and many other locations. Usually the response time from the point we sign a delivery contract to the point of delivering power to the grid, you're talking about less than 30 days. So why did we take so long in Ukraine? So there are lessons learned here. First of all, we realized that in Ukraine, they did not have site conditions pre-planned. Okay, so that's one discovery. Secondly, project design and project construction had a lot of mishaps, and these are local contractors. So my point here is Taiwan is different. Taiwan is perhaps one of the very few countries, especially in this part of the world, that has immense engineering and construction capabilities. That's one. Taiwan has rich and deep engineering and technical talent pool. That's 2. Taiwan has amazing, in my opinion, amazing supply chain, a very mature supply chain when it comes to component manufacturing, when it comes to precision manufacturing. Taiwan has it. So I think, same situation applied here. It will be a very different outcome. But these are strengths that Taiwan has, and my plea to the country of Taiwan is for the government to be more aggressive and more proactive in doing pre-planning, in doing simulation exercises, right? And I know the country is already doing that. The government is already embarking on this initiatives, but more certainly can be done, and we'll be very happy to play a role in partnering whoever we need to.
Thank you. That's a really valuable recommendation and suggestion. And pass over to Tsai-In.
Okay, so I think what Taiwan can learn from Ukraine's experience is that can divide it two lessons. So one is about the wartime reality. So what's the actual attacks that happen to the critical infrastructure? Is that in the early stage of the war, actually the Russian attacks Ukraine's grid nodes. Most of the substations were damaged during the first year. And also the connection, the transmission lines interconnected with the nuclear power plants, and also the cooling system of the nuclear power plants were the first attacking targets in Ukraine. So there are stages of the attacks, and Taiwan should learn from this. So obviously, Chairman Zen has already said that Taiwan company has already been doing all these substations, protection mechanisms. These are very critical for Taiwan. And to further on, for example, to learn from Ukraine's 3-tier protection mechanism. So one with temporary shelters, and the second with more reinforced shelters, and maybe go to long-term underground substations. So all these 3-tier protection mechanism that Taiwan can actually learn from it. And I think the second lesson is that actually during the war, this has already happened in a long time, right? So the Ukraine has a capability to still build renewables, so solar panels, and also small-scale gas turbines, and also mini CHP, the combined heat and power generators. These are very critical equipment to help Ukraine to sustain their power supply, even under the situation that they cannot be connected to the big power grid. So that these all small microgrids can actually supply the household and also industrial users power usage. And currently, they are after the war, the Ukrainian government has already planned that they are going toward more renewable energy afterward, and also to build a more distributed power system and power grid in the future. That's because they have already done that. Actually, the 110 kilovolts transmission lines actually play a very important role in terms of interconnect all these renewables in Ukraine. So they're actually doing this pathway, and Taiwan can then also learn from it to strengthen its energy resilience in general.
If I can add a very quick comment, I think there's a lot of underlying themes here. While not everything may be applicable to Taiwan, but the basic principle of risk management and risk abatement is, first of all, you need redundancy, so you need buffers. And secondly, you need to diversify, right? It goes with anything else that we do, right? Including our stock portfolio, our investments, and so on and so forth. Diversification is key. And I think what we've learned from Ukraine is also the fact that they have diversified, or they intend to diversify their generation such that, when issues do happen, it is contained to the area, right? Because it is not a centralized model. Doesn't mean that everything applies here to Taiwan, but I guess, in principle, that's a good strategy in terms of generation assets. Not everything has to be gas. Even if it is gas, not everything has to be heavy duty. It could have multiple variations. And then, of course, you have renewables, right? Nuclear, and so on and so forth. So I think diversification is a key strategy.
Okay. And that's a very good suggestion. Redundant and diversify basically is a very good principle to maintain, to improve the resilience. Also complying with the Taiwan Power Company strategy, they try to diversify their infrastructure, their critical infrastructure, and also try to make a redundancy everywhere. I pass over to Yen, sorry.
I have a question for Patrick and the chairman, I think. For a short period, I was an energy bureaucrat in a jurisdiction where we were trying to transition from 100% gas to more renewables, but with low inertia. So frequency control was a major issue. And I remember the energy minister saying to me, "Ian, why does this have to be so difficult?" And I said, "Because, Minister, if you move this far off 50 hertz, and that's the frequency in that system, the lights go out, the system shuts down, and you might lose your job." So the question I have is, when you're bringing in emergency power supplies into decentralized grids that are inherently smaller, how do you integrate rapidly and risk manage grid stability?
So this is where the technology aspect of what is available comes in. So going back to the earlier point of partnership between public and private sector. In terms of technology development, the same technology that I just referenced earlier, the TM2500s, because they are derived from aircraft engine technology, these sort of turbines can start very quickly. It has fast ramp capability. So to your point, as you transition to renewables, for example, you're going to introduce fluctuations to the grid. So you need something to be able to correspond in a very rapid fashion, and that would be something that the technology can offer. It ramps up very quickly. At the same time, the same technology also has built-in synchronous condenser. which means it provides stability to the grid, right? Inertia and so on and so forth. Now, Australia is a good example where the market has, or the authorities has recognized the need for this. As such, a lot of the PPA that is being issued has this sort of mechanism to encourage this sort of investments. Other countries may follow at some point because as renewable penetration continues to grow, it is without a doubt that this is a need in terms of grid stability. So the technology itself actually helps us get to a certain point of stability for the grid.
Okay, thank you. And Chairman Zhen.
对，我以为除了主持人以外，其他人不能提问这样。OK， 好。那个刚才问到了一个非常技术的问题哦，就是说我们如果是再生能源的占比越来越高以后，怎么样维持电网？那个其实1:1半岛前一阵子那个整个电网出了一些大的状况，大家都在讨论，就是再生能源如果渗透比例很高的时候，怎么样去维持它的频率？那我这样子讲，以台电公司来看，我们现在的状况是这样：第一个，就是你如果单纯不考虑传统机组，跟再生能源匹配的一定是储能，就是 battery 是关键了，就是我们的这些相关的储能设备。那台湾现在整个储能设备，整个总量大概已经有1个 gigawatt，但另外一个公司跟奇异公司也有关系。其实现在很多的天然气机组，它越来越考虑它的升载效率，就是它的天然气机组是那个升降载效率最好的，它能够在很短的时间之内供电，或是往下减少发电。所以它的状况就是一个快速反应的天然气机组。那当然。刚才提到的都是涵盖型不是 combined cycle 哈，现在有很多就是1:1的 combined cycle， 就是不是2个 GT 对1个 ST， 现在都大概我们现在新部署的都是1个 GT 对1个 ST， 就是让它的反应速度会更加快，然后启动的时候总量不会这么大，其实都是在因应弹性。台湾现在投资的状况就是以台湾电网，就台电现在投资再加上民间投资，我们几乎是各种的发电模式都存在台湾了。以我们现在，那当然现在是核能的关系，核能现在是没有，但是我们有过核能，那些技术也都在。那我觉得基本上就台湾来说，就是以发电形式的多元性、电网调频所用到的所有的工具，其实在台湾的电网里面几乎都有用到，而这一些整个综合的结果。台湾还被加了一个非常特别的额外条件，就是台湾是一个制造业为主的国家，其实台湾有2/3的电力，其实是用在生产服务全世界。如果是自己使用的话，以台湾现在的发电能力，大概1/3，就是我如果是台湾只是处理国内消费，暂时不考虑我要大量出口我们重要的科技产品，那台湾自己的消费真是完全不到1/3，所以它是一个很特殊的状况。我觉得可能现在全世界没有一个国家像我们这样，就是我们有2/3的电力其实是用来服务全世界的，这是一个比较特殊的状况。那因为有这样子的前提，所以我们有很多的考验，也尝试很多新的东西，也非常愿意跟国际的科技的前沿合作。然后在能源的稳定供应上面跟很多国家合作。
Thank you, Chairman. Then a supplemental discussion. Actually, I just realized if just for domestic consumer usage, Taiwan only requires 1/3 of the capacity from the energy. So that sounds like good news. And Chairman then also mentioned he suspects only moderator can ask questions. Actually, it's not. He's happy to answer a question. And the other good news is we are already running out all prepared questions. So you are happy to raise the question, shooting to each other instead of shooting to me. I have one additional question. Actually, it's regarding to what Professor Yan just mentioned. Especially, CRO security will be one of the biggest vulnerability according to the critical infrastructure. And we're not talking about deep space or outside space. We're talking about something nearby, for example, like a sea, anything under the water. If anything under the water basically is a threat. The threat could be from very calm to very, very aggressive in very short period of time because it's underwater, it's invisible, uncontrollable. So according to that, do you have any suggestion how to improve the resilience or security for any underwater critical infrastructure from your point of view? And first question, point to Professor Yen.
Okay, well, some of the most critical infrastructure given Taiwan's technology richness, of course, are communications cables. And I heard this morning there's also sovereign satellite capability. But the big risk, as you have identified, Kenny, under the sea, the cutting of those cables. Now, they periodically, as I understand it, get severed through earthquakes, but because there's a lot of redundancy, that's not usually a problem. You can take your time, go and repair the cable. But if there is an aggressor, and the aggressor may well know where all the cables are, they can very quickly sever them. So one of the key things is to know or identify when something is happening and respond, possibly with allies, to halt any sabotage. I think, though, the best strategy is deterrence, to deter anybody taking those sorts of aggressive actions. And that brings us back to Taiwan's friends and allies and their naval capability. And I mentioned Australia. I didn't mean to do a sales job, but I mentioned Australia is investing big time. And I suspect Prime Minister Albanese will be meeting with President Trump next week. And I suspect that's got to do with some of the announcements that we have heard in the last 2 weeks of major upticks in defence expenditure, particularly to protect the maritime domain. So deterrence by countries like the US, the UK is back in this region, which is great. Australia investing big time in subsea capability and surveillance capability from the air, both autonomous and manned aircraft, which have had the odd laser shot at them, by the way. So I think those things are all important, but it's really about deterrence. We don't want something to happen.
Thank you. Any additional comments, Hai-Yin?
Yeah, if I may, can add something with Ian's comment. So I think in addition to the submarine communication cables, right now another issue is that our team is going to publish another report on the submarine power cable security issues, because submarine power cable, unlike communication cable, they don't have this redundancy. Communication cable always has 2 lines in parallel, but power cables does not, because they has a higher cost, and also the maintenance cost is also higher expensive. So I think back to our topic of resilient, how to have a resilient cable system underwater. We have to maintain our capacity in terms of repair and maintenance. Right now, if we wanted to repair one cable, that would take at least 6 months. And that is because the limit numbers of these cable maintenance ships and vessels, and also talents and equipment. So, I mean, for Taiwan, undersea power cables, these are also very critical, because we can also learn from the Estonia's case. Their power cable got cut, and their energy price just doubled right after. So for Taiwan, to have a resilient submarine power cable system and to have a repair and maintenance capacity is also very important, in addition to the deterrence.
Okay.
No, I would want to highlight Taiwan's capability, and I believe that over time you will very quickly realize that that's a critical strength and asset that you have. And what I mean by that is, throughout the discussions today, we hear a lot about building redundancies and stockpiles on critical parts and so on and so forth for critical infrastructure. It's not just building stockpile, but also investing in capabilities such that you can have them and build them yourselves. And I think the ecosystem, going back to the supply chain ecosystem, because it is mature and you have the engineering depth and technical depth, I think there's more that we can explore and to see how we can really build those capabilities within Taiwan. So the ideal state would be you invest in a technology, and that technology is powering, X percentage of the grid. And if anything goes down, you actually have a supplier in your backyard that will manufacture those components for you. That will be the ideal scenario because everything is in-house and contained within Taiwan. Idealistic, but not far away in my opinion, because I feel like there are some discussions that are already headed us in that direction.
Thank you. Chairman Zheng.
好，其实海底电缆要怎么样子保护？我觉得刚才燕有讲到一个很关键的事情，就是要能够嚇阻。那嚇阻不会是只有设备或技术，它其实需要法令跟比方说司法等等的一些可能介入。那这个秩序需要国家一起来建立。其实我们已经在做一些研究哦。其实状况就是你要辨识谁是肇事者会很重要，就是这一些破坏海底电缆的船舶等等，能不能够被有效辨识出来，会是重要的一个关键。那我们会遇到什么样的状况？当然，现在有一些报道就是有专门特殊去破坏海缆的装置跟设备，但现在看起来比较多的还都是用海底在脱锚，在勾断。那海底脱锚勾断的这些状况，事实上每一艘船舶的声纹都是特别的。如果这些声纹可以被收集，也可以变成司法起诉的对象，它是海上警察可以逮捕人的一个基础。我觉得这种技术就值得我们做，我们也试着努力在做这些相关的工作。那这些工作要做，其实有些技术我们要持续克服。第一个还是一样，就是如果你要即时传讯的话，它有电力、通讯等等的问题要克服。附挂在电缆上面，可能我们可以来想象一些解决的方案。那但是附挂在光缆，就是光纤上面要怎么样解决，可能就要另外做一些设想。那我刚才有说到，就我们有同样的问题，有很多人应该要能够一起来合作。不过我觉得最重要的是要建立那个系统，就是可以究责、可以嚇阻这件事。如果在司法系统上可以先建立起来，后面的技术发展就会有价值。
Okay, thank you. Chairman Zheng just mentioned deterrence is critical, but the deterrence require your local domestic law regulation and require law enforcement agent, require international law, for example, like a UN Convention for Law of Sea, and so require international cooperation, and also depends on the location of the damage. For example, it's under the territorial water, or under the exclusive economic zone, or in the high sea. Actually, that's a very complicated issue. If anything happened in the high sea, also concerned with jurisdiction issues, and who has a sovereignty. So far, only the flag state has a sovereignty. So that would be a very complicated issue. But anyway, happy to collaborate with different stakeholders and different international partners to explore more potential opportunity to work on the particular issues. So before I open to the floor, last question, do you have any question on the shooting each other? Hearing none, thank you. I'd like to open the floor to the public. And please just raise your hand and share your name and affiliation to everyone. Thank you very much.
Yes, please wait until our staff pass the microphone to you. Yes. It's there. Yeah. 中间那边。好。
对不起，先第二位，中间这位先。
刚才那边也有一位，对。
You'll be the second one. Sorry. We should have a button to you.
Thank you very much. I have a question regarding nuclear energy. It was only touched upon a little bit here. I'm leaving away all the, how shall I say, the whole political discussion about nuclear purely from an energy security point of view. For Taiwan, is nuclear something it should have or it shouldn't have? Should it have it because it runs quite a long time once you fill it up and you don't need to ship in new uranium? Or is it dangerous, as we saw in Zaporizhzhia in Ukraine, because it can also become a target? What is the thinking of the panel on nuclear energy from the energy security point of view?
I think that's passed to Patrick.
I decide to, I must be able to leave the country after I say this. No, I'm just kidding. So, look, I think if we approach this without political views, going back to the earlier point about risk diversification, risk management, the answer is yes. If you are able to construct nuclear power plants or you have nuclear power plant that has already been decommissioned, perhaps, I think that it is worth considering whether that is something that we should add back into the broader diversity of generation assets that we have. Similar question was asked to a national utility of a country in ASEAN, I will not name who, last week. And the utility responded quite forthrightly to say that, hey, we have coal in our backyard, so I'm going to burn coal. I don't really have other options. So energy trilemma between security, affordability, sustainability. How do you prioritize? There is no easy answer. There's no one true answer. Every country will have to deal with it differently. So that would be my honest opinion.
Okay, Chai-in?
Yeah, if I may add something, I don't need to leave the country though. But anyway, I do feel like you just said, every country has its own way, right? And I do believe that nuclear power plant does not exist in a void environment. So for Taiwan's power system is quite centralized. So the grid is decentralized. Our nuclear power plants are all localized in a very extreme local location. So in the southeast part and also the northeast part of Taiwan. This means that these nuclear power plants will rely on high voltage, extra high voltage transmission lines, which we have already seen from the Ukraine war that there will be a high risk of any kind of substation sabotages on our substations. And especially for our thermonuclear power plants, we only have 2 interconnected transmission lines, which go to the same routes, and will easily be interrupted if there is any kind of potential attacks. So, I mean, from national security perspective, when we are talking about nuclear power plants' role in the actual war scenario, we have to think about all these kind of risks. And if you really wanted to use it or make it as an option, then we definitely need to consider all these, for example, interconnected system, how do we better protect them? And also the cooling system, how do we better protect them? So that's my answer. Thank you.
Okay, right, thank you. Just one reminder that we'll pass over to the next question. This section actually was a lot of discussion, quite sensitive, very confidential. So we don't commit all the question will be response as you wish, but we try our best. I should also indicate the session should be whole in the international protocol. It's a traffic light protocol. It should be red color. So only share to all participants. Please do not share to any third party. So I'd like to take a question to the next one.
Okay, 请教台电曾董事长啊，就是如果我们去结合太阳能小型发电机以及磷酸铁锂电池，然后在台湾利用学校去建置数千个社区微电网，那它应该是目前我们形成这种冗余供电冗余性价比非常好的方案。那如果做这样子的处理，然后再把这些社区微电网交给电业的专业人员、理科教师一起把它变成地方的社交中心、电力的社交中心，那么很可能就是性价比会更好。那这个东西可能动作要快，原因是因为台湾少子化的速度非常快，那台湾50人以下的中小学有500多所，100人100人以下的中小学有1000多所，这些学校在现在少子化的进程里面，很快可能就会被废弃。所以，如果可以在比较短的时间之内去进行这种社区微电网的建制，以及这些 学校功能上的这种扩充，可能我们成本不多性价比会很好请教台电，谢谢。
Chairman 曾，
这一题我们已经在做了。那个我们前排的长官也知道，我们已经讲了一段时间，我们也尝试在做。但是在台湾有些特别，就是我们因为前面电池部件的问题，所以要到学校里面，我们现在还在设计它的一些相关规格，跟地方政府做合作。所以我必须这样子讲，就是说结合太阳光电板、储能、简易的发电机，另外如果再加上一个设施就更好，就是如果我们能够在学校里面安排那种战备水井，就是供电供水等等，然后我们现在学校有营养午餐，有配膳室，有什么，但学校还有空调，其实是一个非常好的组合。那这件事情我们已经提供了一些建议，那当然我也希望能够在很快的时间内能够做。那这一次就是行政院编列的一些韧性的预算，我们希望尤其还有包含丹纳斯的那个灾后的一些重建的经费，我们希望能够试验出一些可以被其他人参考的例子，但也很同意这件事情可以拿来作为能源教育的一个部分。我们已经在设计，也在开始跟地方政府做沟通。
Okay, thank you. Basically, redundant and diversify are very resource hungry. So when you try to expand the diversity, expand the redundancy, basically require a lot of resource investment. And anyway, the government tried the best to balance the financial consideration, also resilience consideration, and try to make a proper arrangement and resource allocation, and try his best. So happy to take the next question. Okay, excellent. No other question. So before I conclude the section, can I invite you to give a big round of applause to all attendees and speaker. Okay, I pass over to MC.
Thank you very much, and would you please all stand up and let's have a photo together on the stage. Thank you. 好，我们请这个场次的主持人以及我们的主讲人3位语坛人呢，我们往舞台中间移动，一起来合照。All right, let's have a photo together. 好，再次掌声，谢谢。Thank you once again to all our speakers on the stage. All right, everybody, we finished early.